When I was in college, I attended film school, and let me tell you, I loved it. What a great experience. I met so many awesome people and learned so much, and I always loved it when we had a chance to create a short film, a chance to be able to tell stories with your unique vision. For me, I had a really hard time brainstorming and coming up with ideas while I was physically at the school. I couldn't concentrate in the dorms, and the library and places like that just didn't give the creative vibe. So, I started going on these long night drives whenever I needed to brainstorm. I'd throw on some tunes and just drive around letting my mind go to all sorts of wild places. On one of these night drives, I started to see flashing lights in my rearview mirror. When I looked back, the lights were getting closer and it was clear that I was getting pulled over for something. I pulled over and noticed that the car pulled over behind me. The lights went off, and I just sat there for a minute or two contemplating what I could have done possibly to get pulled over like this. I took the key out of the car and set it on my dashboard. I don't know if that's like a universal thing, but I was always told when you get pulled over, put the key there. I started to look in the mirror, trying to make out any details that I could, but it was just too dark. From what I could tell, it looked like a pickup truck, but I couldn't be 100% certain. I started to have my doubts that this was even a real cop. I had just never seen a pickup truck cop car. And I started thinking that it could have been an undercover cop, but I still kept going to that same point, which was, what did I do? Finally, someone emerged from the vehicle. It was dark, but I could clearly see that this person was wearing black pants and a black hooded sweatshirt. Full alarm bells were going off because I was sure that I had never seen a cop with a hoodie on, but it didn't speed away because I still had that fear of, what if this was a cop? I would be fleeing the police and they would have my license plate, and it was a whole mental battle that I was having. He looked like wobbling all over the place as he was walking towards my car, and when he got to my window, which was rolled down about a quarter of the way, I could see most of his face, even through the hood as it was firmly on. He starts shouting from outside the window, "Step out of the vehicle now." I could immediately smell the booze reeking out of his breath towards my face through the little crack in the window. And I know I'm stupid, but it took me this long to finally be sure that this wasn't a real cop. And I just yelled through the window, "No," grabbed my keys, and tried to start my car. While I was struggling to find the keyhole, the man shouted again that I said get out right now. He then lifted part of his sweatshirt and started to pull something out that looked like a firearm, but I couldn't be sure. I just ducked down, put the car into gear, and drove off as fast as I could. I couldn't enjoy any relief in that moment, though, because within seconds, I now saw him following me. He didn't turn on the flashing lights, but got close enough to my car that he was straight up tailgating. If I switched lanes, he switched lanes. The speed limit on these dark roads was 45 miles per hour, and I was driving over 65 miles per hour trying to lose this guy. Before I knew it, I was almost 30 minutes away from campus, and this guy was still directly on my tail. I then did something that I had seen a million times in movies, and I couldn't believe that it actually worked. I was closing in on an on-ramp for the highway. I waited until the last possible second, and then swerved over and got onto the highway, forcing him to miss the ramp, or he may have crashed. About 2 minutes passed and I saw no lights behind me. I hoped that I had finally lost this madman. Instead of getting off at the next exit, which I had a feeling that he may have thought was my plan, I made an illegal U-turn on the highway and got to the other side. I made the short drive back and got off the exit that I got on. I had no idea where I was. I drove around slowly for a while until I found a 24-hour gas station, and I go inside and told this guy what had happened and basically just begged him to call the police in that moment, which thankfully he did. I also had to ask him for directions back to the school. Now this was before everyone had cell phones all the time, so I couldn't just GPS my way back. I had a brick phone that I usually just kept in my dorm, and when the cops showed up, I gave them all the information I could, which honestly wasn't that much since it was so dark. I mean, how many people own a pickup truck and a hoodie? Probably millions. The cop was honest and told me that they most likely would never find out who the man was since I didn't get any plate information. He was super nice, though, and escorted me back to the school just in case that man resurfaced. I think about that night a lot, and just how crazy it was and how stupid I was. I wanted to punch the past version of myself for pulling over and not reacting faster. Whenever I have a truck tailgating me at night now, I'm always reminded of that night, and I just hope that all these years later that truck man never returns.
A few months ago, I was partaking in one of my many late drives. I usually just drive around if I'm stressed or go sit by the water to clear my mind, and it's a total mental health saver. Anyways, after about partway through my drive, I decided to go park at the entrance to a popular walking trail. I figured it was late, so nobody would be there to complain about me blasting my music or relaxing in my car. Note that you drive to the trail by taking a narrow and bumpy dirt road, and the speed limit is 20 kilometers per hour. But it's full of massive potholes, so you usually have to drive pretty slow or you'll screw up your car. After navigating the narrow pothole-ridden road like an expert pilot, I arrived at the parking lot in one piece. But much against what I expected, there were 5 or 6 cars spaced out along the parking lot's edge and one closer to its center. This on its own isn't too out of the ordinary. However, it was close to 2 a.m. at this point, so I was a little creeped out, but it didn't really faze me. After I found a spot close to the middle, I noticed that none of the cars had any lights on, not inside or out. This was odd, as I'm pretty sure people don't usually go for group walks at 2 a.m., and if someone was sitting in them, you'd see the center console lights or something else light up at the very least. After all, who wants to sit in complete darkness? Not giving it much more thought, I cranked up my music and laid back while staring at the sky. Nothing happened until 20 minutes later. Like clockwork, car engines came to life and headlights cut through the dark. Each car except for the one by the entrance left in a line as if connected by a chain. At this point, I felt like something was off. It just didn't make sense. After seeing the line of cars leave, I figured I should head home myself. So I started up my car and began backing out of my parking space. As I did, the last car's high beams came on. This made it so that I couldn't see what I was doing, and it annoyed me. So I finished pulling out, a little too quickly, and went to the road. The other car followed. As I slowed down to avoid the potholes, the other car sped up. This continued until they were directly behind me. Keep in mind, I still couldn't properly see as they left their high beams on. This freaked me out, so I decided to speed up drastically. And as expected, the car behind me did the same. At this point, I was traveling down the narrow road at about 60 kilometers per hour, while gritting my teeth over all the expensive sounds coming from my poor car. But the car was still tailgating me. I began to freak out, slamming my gas pedal into the floorboard and attempting to speed off. But to no one's surprise, this didn't seem to shake them. We were no longer on the narrow road at this point, but rather a connecting road to the main one. I was scared. I needed to think of something fast, or I might end up on a milk carton or some missing person report, and that was all I could think about. Then I saw it. Up ahead, there was a sharp turnoff onto an area that overlooks the water. Think of it like a deep shoulder that you can park in while facing the lake. This was the perfect place for me to loose the car behind me. As I got closer, I continued to speed up. I was traveling at well over 80 kilometers per hour. Then, once I got a couple meters away, I slammed on my brakes and turned my wheel as sharp as I possibly could, almost ending up in the bushes. As I did so, the other car shot past me and continued down the road. I felt so relieved. After gathering myself, I pulled out and drove down to the intersection to go home. I was home free and coming down off of an adrenaline rush higher than the CN tower. Finally, the light turned green and I could go. But as I did, I saw the car driving down the side street that went to the water, and it sent chills through my spine. What if I stayed there rather than driving back? What did these people want from me? I'm truly glad I never had the opportunity to find out.
When I was younger, each summer and almost every New Year, my family would pack the car and go on a road trip to visit family in Mexico. We never had any problems until one particular trip when I was 8. Like every road trip before, we left our home in North Texas around 6 p.m. in order to reach our destination the following morning. So around 2 a.m., we crossed into Mexico. That's when things got weird. When you're on an only stretch of freeway in the middle of a desert, you don't tend to freak out about having the same car behind you for miles. It was practically pitch black on the outside of our car windows, the only visible shapes being the dotted stars and the eerie silhouettes of the cacti. We'd been in Mexico for an hour and a half, still had a few more hours to drive, and I remember sleeping but not being semi-conscious of what was around me, because I didn't have the skill to really fall asleep in a car. So when my mother suddenly spoke my dad's name, I heard her. "Miguel, that car behind us, it's been behind us since we left Laredo." My dad peeked at the car and shrugged off my mom's tension. "A lot of cars use this road. He's probably going to Reynosa or another city," and left it at that. Despite his sureness, my mom kept a weary eye on that car behind us. By this time, my siblings and I were hyper aware of the car and entertained ourselves with watching it through the gaps in the luggage that blocked the rear window. We got tired pretty quickly. "He's getting closer," my mother noted. We turned to watch as the car inched closer and closer to ours. "He's too close, Miguel." She was right. By this time, the car was practically pressed against the rear of our car, and on a lonely stretch of the highway in the middle of nowhere with another few hours until daylight. It was downright scary. We couldn't do much. My dad didn't slow down, didn't stop, and he didn't speed away either. He just drove, and that car followed. The next 30 minutes were the most tense we had ever experienced. The car would ease off sometimes, only to press its blinding headlights against our rear once more. Like he knew he was freaking us out, and enjoyed it. It was during one of the periods that the car had pulled away that my mom spotted a police car up ahead, parked on the side of the road, and she didn't miss a beat. "Pull over, right in front of the police. Pull over right now, Miguel." And he did. And that car kept driving. I wonder how confused the policeman must have been as he watched my dad park our car right in front of him. The policeman came over and asked what was wrong. My mother urgently told him everything. The car, the way it followed us and taunted us. The policeman took her claims seriously and told us how people were victimized and had their cars stolen on these empty highways by thugs and criminals. Then he offered to drive behind us for a while to make us feel safer. We drove off with that police cruiser behind us, relieved. Until about 10 minutes later, when we saw something that confirmed the policeman's words and my mother's worst fears. We saw that car pulled over, on the side of the road, waiting.